Carl and Lou here from Brrraaains Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial for short. And it's horror movie review time as we're doing something really, really modern and up to date. You've seen the title, it is The Forever Purge, the latest entry in the long-running Purge series. So before we get to the movie, let's do a little bit of history. Our personal history with the Purge franchise to date. Starting with me, seen them all, including both seasons of the Amazon TV series. So, The Purge, the original, I thought was an okay movie with some cool ideas that once you start pulling on the very obvious threads, fell apart. It was enjoyable up to a point, but there was too many times where I got distracted by stupidity. And the overriding one I always remember is Ethan Hawke's character as like the one responsible, like creating the security stuff, and his security doors can be pulled off with a truck and a chain, and it's like, well, that ain't that fucking good. But I thought it was an intriguing new idea in horror. I say, you just didn't dare pull on that string of, well, what happens if this happens, and what if that happens, and how does that work, and all the stuff that made the whole world collapse. But I liked it. I thought it was a fun movie to a degree. The sequel, The Purge Anarchy, I really didn't like, because what that did, it went, well, what worked what did people want to see? And what they decided people didn't want to see was masks and people going, la 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 la, I'm crazy, la 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 la. God. I appreciated it, took it into a bit of a wider and open thing and really doubled down on a lot of the political value between the rich and the poor and aspects like that. I did like that, but I found what it focused on was nothing for me. The Purge election year, I'm more of a fan of, because that took it really into the political realms and played around with ideas that were there and what would happen and how far would this government go to protect their own interests and stuff like that. But ultimately, that was more of an action movie, I think, than anything else. But also did the usual la la la. You know, I know I keep doing that.
Hate that.
Hate it.
It's such a trope as well. I think I saw like a top 10 recently of like people that played like the best, well played psychopaths. And it was the ones that you didn't expect, the ones that didn't have to say they were crazy by doing that la la la. It was like the unspoken stuff. By
that point, it all starts falling apart. Even the smallest things. And what I started to heavily dislike was this implication that just about everybody was a raging psychopath waiting to purge. And the moment it came, rather than just, I don't know, doing a crime of passion and go out and look, my boss is a dick, I'm going to go kill him. They were all making masks and creating crazy weapons and you know, they instantly come out dancing in the streets and stuff like that. Plus, by that point, you were asking too many questions. And it was always saying things like, why is it that when all crime is legal, it only ever seems to be murder and assault? What about other crimes? And it's stuff they never wanted to touch upon. Of course they don't. Do you know what I mean? Because it stops The Purge being a kind of fun movie and starts going to dark. And I'm going to say it. They never ever dared focus on, well, what about women who are raped, men who are raped? What about spousal abuse? What about abuse? You know, just that stuff. What about paedophilia? What about all these horrific crimes that could apparently now be legal? Class 4 weapons. They imply and they try to only focus on one aspect, even though they're like, oh, crime is legal for 12 hours. And it's like, I don't want you to focus on the stuff I've mentioned, I don't. But when you're making a franchise of this, you've got to develop it. And what it always felt like for me was The Purge was doing baby steps, never doing big steps forward, never going, right, we're really going to push this idea. And I started to want one specific thing from The Purge, and it was my overriding question from day one, which was, how do people get up the day after or go to work, just carry on? How do you carry on? And I know the film tries to say, well, people are purged, so all that anger is out, and then crime is and it's normal living and stuff like that. And obviously you've got the political aspect where it's about cleaning up the streets and getting rid of the homeless, and that way there's more jobs available and stuff like that, so everyone's financially better. So in theory everyone's happier. But how do you as a human person get up the next day after potentially murdered or having been almost murdered? How do you carry on?
It's all like,
never developed.
No, and like kind of like, oh, I go to work, oh, my workplace isn't there anymore, it's been burned down. So I've got another year until my next place of work gets bombed. It's
these threads. What if I tried to purge my boss and I failed? How do I go to work the next day and we just carry on like nothing's normal? What if I purge 7 of my fucking colleagues? Do you see what I mean? There's all this aspects that just didn't, as we keep saying, you pull those threads and you just watch it collapse. 1 or 2 and it's collapsing immediately. So, but I've always continued to carry on. So when I saw there was a TV series on Amazon, I was like, okay, a Purge TV series, this might work. This might work. Because I thought, spread across, I think it's 8 to 10 episodes, come over it's 10 or 8, season 1 I'm talking about. I thought, oh sweet, you've got times for characters here. I can get to know characters over a Purge year potentially, and we can do that. Unfortunately, season 1 didn't really wow me because I think it focused heavily on the Purge again. It basically is just an entire Purge situation. While it does have more character-based stuff, I just found myself back in that world. Occasionally to do little things that I like the cult aspect. The cult aspect was quite cool. And I got into that. But I found season 1 to be ultimately just more Purge. Better than some of the films, but quite on par with the original movie.
Yeah.
And then they released season 2. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is my fucking jam. The Purge season 2 might as well have been made for me. As silly as that sounds. Because what they did was they went, we're going to focus on everything but the Purge itself. So, without going into too much detail, it opens. The first episode is Purge Night, as it's coming to an end. The last episode is the year later, the next Purge. So everything in between is about characters trying and what happens after. So, for example, one character is almost killed by a hitman who he finds out all his neighbours put out the hit on him.
Yeah.
But he survives it. How do you carry him? They can't move. They can't afford to move and leave and stuff like that. What happens if you're in the middle of a bank robbery when the Purge sirens go off?
Yeah.
And the tricksiness of your foot was still on the property when that went off, so technically you are now a criminal.
Yeah.
That aspect is brilliant. What happens if the government themselves break the Purge rules? That is a brilliant, brilliant thing. So many great stories. Oh, and one of the best of all of that series, what happens if you can't stop yourself from purging? What happens if you feel like you can't wait a year?
Yeah.
These are the questions I wanted answered. Yeah. It has its flaws. I think, if I remember, episode 8 or 9 is one of the most fillery ever. Like, it almost shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I was hooked. And I was like, this is the shit. Oh my God, I hope they capitalise on this. They moved. It wasn't baby steps anymore. It felt like they were like, right, it's now time to go in the directions that people want. Or at least I felt people wanted. But apparently I am in the minority. Yeah. Because what we got after that was The First Purge, which was a prequel. The very first Purge, the testing ground. And it doubled heavily down to the political thing and the racism issue. But all we got was Purge again, but more basic because it was the first. Yeah. And it was just like, done this. We've done this. Call it The First Purge didn't make it any more exciting. Because it's like, it's just, because by doing that, what you did was all the developments had gone. Yeah. We were just back to square one. I did not like that film.
I haven't seen that. I've not seen the first one.
Well, no, it's not the first one.
No, the first Purge.
Yeah. And then we come to now, the Forever Purge. And I read the description and I saw the trailer, and I'll admit I was interested because I was like, oh my God, it's a big step. And obviously, if you know what we're going to be telling you, because we're talking it through, this is spoiler heavy. I was stoked to be like, oh, they're finally doing it, the big step up. What happens when people just stop obeying? And what happens when you create a fucking land of psychopaths? Why should they stop?
Yeah.
And I thought that was fascinating. I thought it was.
Yeah, I like the idea of it. I think that the whole Purge in general could be set further forward in the future, because then you can kind of get round certain things and it will be more fantastical. I feel like the fact it's still too close to where we are now.
I really disagree with that. I don't want it set in some future with futuristic cars and weapons and stuff. That sounds terrible.
No,
But then what could be different?
Yeah,
It already is set in a sort of almost futuristic because of the way the government works and the founding fathers and that aspect.
Yeah, I do enjoy it, but I think overall there's still too many. Well, this wouldn't happen. Like, I know you have to kind of detach your brain for a little bit, but there's just too much for me to go.
No, I'm okay with. No, I'm okay. I think we disagree on this. I'm totally okay with what happens in it because I see it as exactly what it is. A different world. It's a different world. It might as well be a parallel world to ours. It's a story in a film. I buy into the Purge concept. What I'm not buying into anymore is the way they just hit the same notes and are willing to move things forward. Yeah. And unfortunately, as much as I was excited about this movie, I don't think it's the worst in the series. No. However, I think it's incredibly disappointing. Yeah. I think it's terrible at times, good at times, but misses the mark by some distance. And again, barely moves the franchise forward. Yeah. Baby steps at best, purely so they can get another fucking film out of it. Yeah. Which I then found out is in production, which is incredibly frustrating. Yeah. We knew it by the end, but my God, it was just like, you really could have really stepped this forward. And here's the thing though, I get it. why a large portion of people dislike this movie. So you go on reviews and all that, and read up on, say, IMDb and stuff like that. Every other review bitches and moans about how political this movie is. Yeah. First things first, have you never seen anything by The Purge before? Yeah. They're all political. However, and I'm not accusing anyone of this, but I do wonder what percentage of those are a little bit hurt by the anti-American stance this movie takes. Yeah. It does. This does not shine a light on America and deals with real issues of racial inequality and immigration and stuff like that. Yeah. We live in the UK. We have our own fucking problems in regards to that. So I can completely recognise about that. And I personally think, yes, give me that, because that's The Purge. Yeah. I don't want that in my slasher horror Halloween sequel. No. Doesn't belong. But The Purge, the fucking series that has always touched upon political, about the power we give to big government, about the disparity between the rich and the fucking poor, about the disparity between black citizens and white. Don't sit there and dare tell me ever that The Purge has never been political and now it's bothering me. You fucking never watched it then or paid attention or just like the la 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 crap. It's always been it. And Jesus Christ, if that's the case, then you best not watch the fucking second series, because that deals with it as well, except that doesn't nuance. Where this film, and where I agree with you, is this film batters you across the head with like a fucking hammer. It has got no subtlety. It's downright embarrassing at times how forced it is. And it results in good actors forced to say things that sound terrible. And I think of the scene between when they're driving the truck, you don't like me. Well, I just think you should stay with your own kind. And it's like you want to put your head in your hand. Because here's the thing, up to that point, we'd gathered that he had a little bit of racial issues with him. While not being a bad man per se, we knew he just didn't really feel comfortable around this Mexican man. But you just couldn't leave it that way, could you? You had to have it openly said in an unnecessary scene, because 10 minutes later, it's all about undoing. Because what they want to do is white man gets redemption through being helped by Mexicans and realising they're not so bad. I mean, even the overall idea of them having to flee and cross the border into Mexico, where safety lies. Like, that's not clever. I find that almost cringy. Like, okay.
It's like the imagery as well. It's like getting ahead of ourselves, but at the end there's some imagery that's like, oh, okay. There we go.
But I can't hate the movie because of that, because that's absurd. To me, like I said, it's been a political story throughout and out. And touching upon real world and real life issues is risky and exciting for a franchise that really, let's be honest, doesn't need to do it. No. Doesn't really need to do that.
You just be mindless nonsense.
Which it is a lot of the fucking time.
Yeah, a lot of the time,
So, it is considered a dystopian Western action horror film. I thought that was really intriguing. The dystopian I get because of the world The Purge exists in. The Western action horror film I find a bit puzzling, and I purely think it's just there because of location more than anything else, and the sort of cowboy aspect and the cities that we take place in. I'm cool with it. Directed by Eduardo Gout and written by series creator James DeMonaco, who also produced along with Jason Blum and Michael Bay. Yeah, I know, there's some names there that will make you go, yeah. And truth be told, I didn't notice a lot of the actually interference from people like Michael Bay. I do think you get a lot of Blumhouse from this. And that's a little worrying, because they're getting their fingers in every pie. And the problem with that is then everything starts to look the same and feel the same. So there is that concern, personally. It was originally intended as the final installment, but now serves as the 5th film in the Purge franchise and is a direct sequel to 2016's The Purge election year. That makes sense, because obviously first Purge was a prequel, and the series is the series is run concurrent to certain things. I forgot, I will go back again. Season 2 does something really special, which has cold opens. Cold opens. So think of your sitcoms.
Oh yeah.
Like The Office, you get your cold open and you get your credits. Purge Season 2 does that. But what it does is every cold open shows you how they deal with an aspect of Purge. And it's fucking some of the best ones in it. And for example, like you see a meeting where they're discussing creations of masks. The masks they wear in a fucking sounding board about selling these masks to people. I found it and obviously famously, if you don't know, spoilers, the very last cold open reveals Ethan Hawke's character selling his stuff to suggest that that's where that one actually exists, timeline wise. He's still alive at that point. I thought that was really cool.
Good. Yeah, I like that idea.
So basically, go check out Season 2 of The Purge. I really liked it. The film stars Anna Della Ruggia, Tenoch Huerta, Josh Lucas, Cassidy Freeman, Leven Ramblin, Alejandro Eda, and Will Patton. Some names there you might recognise, some you will not. It follows a group of people who attempt to escape from the United States after insurrectionist movement continues committing crimes and murders nationwide after the purge ends. That is its basic story. Its basic story is purge doesn't end.
Yep.
And we focus on a specific group of characters, two different types of people, coming together to try and make their way across Texas into Mexico. Delayed from its original July 2020 date due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The Forever Purge was theatrically released on July 2nd, 2021 by Universal Pictures. We watched it at home premiere by Amazon, in case you're wondering how we watched it. I didn't see it in cinema, that's why. I don't even know if it was released in the cinema over here or if it's just gone straight to home premiere.
I'm not sure because we're not following cinema releases at the moment.
No, we're not.
So it may have been briefly. I've noticed quite a lot of films now, they're doing like a brief, because the cinemas are still not completely back to where they were. A lot of them are doing like limited cinema runs and then putting them on their premium services.
Yep.
Just to kind of obviously still get you watching them and paying the money.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly how we did this. The film has grossed 77 million worldwide against its 18 million budget. So, it's not a huge success, but for Purge, it's a decent return on money. It's a decent return. Mixed reviews from critics with praise for its performances and action sequences, but criticism for its writing and perceived preachiness on social issues.
Yeah.
So you can completely understand that. I would argue that while praise for performances do fit in certain areas, as we said already, there are times when it's just about terrible. And I find that in fascinating action sequences. People are praising action sequences. Because I think up to a certain point, yes. Yeah. And then after that, no. I suppose if you want to go then the idea of practical effects. So for example, later in a movie, a tank will shoot and blow up part of a building. And that explosion and resulting chaos is done really, really well. Very realistic. No CG. That shit I can buy into. Yeah, you know? And as I already said, a 6th film is currently in development. Take that as you will. I'm not either or kind of thing. I suppose part of me is intrigued to see what they do following the end of this movie, which is going to be interesting. So, it's 2048. The future.
Still,
8 years after Charlene Rowan's presidential election. So, anarchy. And the new founding fathers of America, the NFFA, have regained control of the US government and have reinstituted the annual purge with its original rules. There we go. We're off to a fucking bad start already. Yeah. So to just undo and get out of the mess that was created at the end of the purge election year, when the purge was stopped, they just go, oh, well, her election came to an end. It's 8 years later and the NFFA are back and have just reinstated purge. And everyone's just gone, yep, cool, no worries, crack on.
Back to it again. Yeah.
And you're like, wow, that was a lot of films I watched be undone in
2 seconds, well, a bit
2 seconds.
Bit of film, TV footage, news footage.
News footage plays over and basically tells us it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, so that was a lot of waste of time then. Because like, it's not like that character, Charlene Rowan, or pops up here.
No.
Like, she's not in it. No. So it's like, oh, okay, great, good stuff. So racial supremacy and nativism have surged nationwide following their re-election. So, that thing. And many outside the ruling party are concerned that the upcoming purge will inflict more damage on the country than the NFFA realises. Now, that aspect I can get into. Because I like the idea of, you know what, everyone's angrier than they've ever been. And contrast that to real life. Contrast that to what's outside your window. And maybe that'll bother you. Maybe you won't like that because ultimately you want to find yourself taken away. Escapism. Yeah. And this makes escapism hard. From a UK perspective, it's not easy to relate, but we watched the same shit that happened in January this year involving the Capitol building and Trump and stuff like that. We watched from afar. We weren't part of that, but so when you get sort of elements like this and this racial disparity and fucking white supremacists walking down the street holding torches and things like that, but we have it over here. We have our own white supremacist issues over here. We have our own fucking moral failings. So we can relate to you in that aspect. So I do completely get why you just want escapism, and this movie isn't going to give you that, I'm afraid.
No, because if it was that's probably what I wanted to do. In my purge, it'd be a lot further forward. Where this is 2048, so I don't feel there's not too much technology. Remember when you were younger, you always picture in the future, you think it'd be like hugely technically advanced.
Yeah.
So 2048, it's there, but it's not like super flying cars, George Jetson kind of style living.
Do you think in real world by 2048 we will have any of that? Look at us now.
Maybe.
Look at us now. Look at us now.
Yeah,
I'm going to get political now. We're more likely to be fucking underwater than flying cars. You know what I mean?
No,
we can't do the
I get
basics,
that,
right? In
but-
the UK, we're facing a potential winter of short-stocked shelves because we haven't got enough freaking lorry drivers.
Yeah. So, but I think with this, you're not going to just dive straight into this. It's like you're going to look ahead and go, not for me. Do you see what I mean?
I think I think it'd be very weird. I find it hard to believe that anyone is starting the purge off here.
Yeah, exactly.
That this is the first purge you're going to watch. Because you could, because there's no real plot development in a long-standing story. Effectively, it pressed the restart button on the purge, so to speak. But I feel like very few people are going in this for the first time. I really would. I'd find that odd, to be honest. Like, I've never watched a Purge film before. Let me watch the Forever Purge. So, we meet married migrant couple Juan and Adelia. They illegally crossing the border into Texas to escape from a Mexican drug cartel and build a new life, with Juan working as a farmhand on the Tucker family ranch, while Adelia begins working in like a meat processing thing near Austin. So that's how we're introduced to them to begin with. And we jump 10 months later and we kind of see how they're getting along. Juan, he's he's quiet, he's reserved in his job, but he's good at his job. And on the Tucker family ranch, it seems like they're respectful. It seems like the majority employ Mexicans, but they also have this white guy as well who seems to have a bit of bitterness about it too. But there is some sort of animosity between Juan and the owner of the ranch's son, which is the one we're talking about at the very, very start, particularly when Juan is able to calm down a horse and he isn't. Whereas Adelia seems to have risen quite high in this sort of processing thing where she's giving advice to sort of new migrants, and her boss is a nice guy, and it's simply about they basically give Mexicans work.
Give them a chance.
Give them a chance quite quickly. So it's the land of that whole land of opportunity crap. It's instantly given and shown. Well, it does work. You know?
I think having different kind of jobs as well is good for that, and it's kind of quite 10 months, and it's not some sort of like, we come 10 months later and they're like, she's running the place, living in a mansion. It's like, 10 months later you're still grafting, and I think it was important to show, because again sometimes people go, immigrants coming over here, coming here, taking jobs and like scribing off the land and stuff, and it's like, no, it's just grafting.
They come work hard and that's it, and they want to build a life for themselves. And we see that through a lot of conversations throughout the films between them. She wants him to speak English, whereas he struggles to do it because he struggles to do it and kind of doesn't want to forget where they come from. They have that disparity between that. She's quite starry-eyed about America. He's less so, which I thought was quite intriguing. But 10 months later, it's the eve of the next annual purge, and we do the usual, seeing people and it's like, oh, they look like trouble, and oh look, someone's sharpening a weapon. I'm going to go out and slash up some people and all stuff like that. But I do appreciate the location change. I do appreciate that we are set in Texas. It's a visually different thing compared to the usual Americanized cities that we get. We will end up in El Paso, but even El Paso has a different look and feel to a lot. There's a lot of dust and a lot of dirt about it. I kind of like that. However, you can almost see the writing on the wall immediately. Like, well, it doesn't stop Hicks. And I always think, and stuff like that. So we're like,
the same people everywhere you go.
Yeah, it's like Adelia's like moving around the town and she's seeing these white guys and they're all like staring at her, and you're like, this is, I almost feel like, to a certain degree, as a purge approach, if I lived in that world, I'd just go to ground a week before. I'd go fucking holiday, leave the country, whatever you could do, but go ground so like you don't draw attention to yourself almost and give anyone a reason to kind of pick on you. Do you know what I mean? Like that aspect of things. But they end up joining a migrant community behind a wall sanctuary where they paid armed security to protect them as the purge kicks off. Through that, Adelia witnesses like purger groups. This is where we're introduced to a purger group who go around in vans declaring themselves the Purge Purification Force, the PPF. And their intent to basically, they're racist. They want to purge America of non-Americans, non-white Americans.
That's the word, isn't it?
And they're doing it with a loudspeaker and they're driving around and stuff like that. And again, it's like, it's impactful, but it's so on the nose because they've got a loudspeaker directly declaring what they want to do. It's like, man, I got that before you did any of that.
And I feel like in that scene, there's bits that were done more subtly that was better. So when there's like that Adelia, I think is it Adelia or Adela?
Well,
Adelia, she goes up on the roof, and the guy's like, "You shouldn't be up here," and she's like, this is better than
I've seen worse.
I've seen worse.
I've seen it all before. Yeah,
I've seen it before, which is like, yeah, okay. Don't forget why they've come to this country, like uprooted themselves because it's dangerous where they're coming from.
Yeah, there was gang warfare and stuff like that.
Yeah,
it's no different.
That felt a lot better than going, "Oh, I come here to seek my fortunes." It's like, well, you can clearly see these people, like this kind of level of violence, is what's their normal life. So yeah, I appreciate that little subtle line.
Yeah, in between their place and the little migrant sort of area, all the migrants together, we jump back to the Tucker Ranch to sort of see how, and again, it's supposed to show the disparity between rich and poor. The migrants are all shuttered in, armed guards, and basically sleeping atop each other. You have the ranch hands, they're relaxed, got shutters down, they're dancing, board games and stuff like that. I thought it was quite interesting. It's interesting in the way that it's what Purge does. Yeah. But there are some quite tension moments here. You get the impression that, like, is it John? I think it's John. I can't remember his name. From the Tucker family. God, what's his name?
Is it Dylan?
Dylan. Sorry,
yeah,
Dylan. Yeah, of course Tucker. It's Dylan. Yeah, Dylan. He seems like he wants to go out and purge. He gets a gun and all that. But mostly the night passes without a thing. Although he does see someone flash by in a camera in the barn, and that's for afterwards. Yeah. Because then, the purge just ends. Yeah. And I was stoked. I was like, oh, yay! We just got through the purge, and now we're going to do the after. And that's kind of cool, because come morning, like, you do get a bit where they're going back to their jobs and they're passing, like, the streets and people are cleaning up blood and all that. And it's like, yes, this is the difficulty of what would be. But we also deal with more of them. Like, Adelia, she goes back in the job and, like, there just aren't many, like, lots of people haven't turned up for work. Yeah. And, like, you can, without saying it, this is where it's good. Without saying it, you're like, the migrant hunters and stuff like that. Like, you get that. Like, you're like, okay, that's pretty cool. And it is tense because we know that this has to carry on. Yeah. And now we're going to head in that direction. So, and it kind of slowly sets it up that way. As at the Tucker Ranch, Dylan goes looking in the barn as one of the horses are free and gets attacked by a guy wearing a sort of skull mask like a cowboy. And ends up tying up the rest of the family. And that turns out to be the white farmhand who wants revenge. And there is a great speech from Will Patton's character about the simple fact that you're no better than the people. You complain about disparity between us and them, but you serve them. Yeah. And you're no better and stuff like that. Yeah. It's really, really... Because it's almost like a direct thing towards an audience of the Purge, I think, to a certain degree.
He's writing your own Death Note, but fair play to Will Patton to...
He is, because he does get shot in the head and dies.
He's got some cojones, but yeah.
And Juan and TT, the other character, actually see all this and they're going to try and rescue them. While meanwhile, Adelia goes out to the back area of her workplace and finds a goat in a cage. You'll have seen this in the trailer. She tries to release it, gets flipped upside down, and then gets attacked by two dudes in the bunny rabbit costumes. Here's why I hate the Purge. Here's what I hate about the Purge. So I liked it, except again, it's like, why is it so elaborate? If you want to kill her, just stab her. Yeah. But the first bunny rabbit guy steps out and does this. And you're like, of course he does, because they've all got to be freaks. They can't just... But then they'll talk normally. Yeah. She's like, oh, you can't do this, the Purge is over. And he's like, no, it's not over, it's Forever Purge. And he talks like a human being, and you're like, so why is he doing all that? You know?
Head stuff, yeah.
The head tilt, you know? And it's like, you don't need to do that shit. Anyway, she gets rescued by a boss. I quite like this fight scene, it's quite brutal. And she gets saved, and I like how it ends with the bolt, because basically in the thing, it's a captive bolt that's going to jam into her face, and they end up escaping. But then they get arrested by the police.
Yeah, because it's not great, is it? Like the scene of a crime.
Well, the police officer says, what the hell are you doing? The Purge is over.
Yeah.
Like
catching them in the act.
Yeah.
Yeah, bad timing, because obviously it's not them that have set up the trap. They're just trying to fight their way out of it. And I like the idea of it. I don't like the people they're in the van with.
Yep. Oh, well, of course. Well, we don't want to get too hard. But
sorry.
To ahead, because we are jumping between the two. But Adelia and her boss are put in the back of a police van, as chaos starts to erupt, basically, around us. I was a bit frustrated that we ended up getting stuck in this van rather than seeing it. And the police are obviously at the front freaking out and stuff like that. It's all in the street. Apparently everybody just went crazy. Yeah. That's what it looks like, which there's a real problem in itself. I get a section who have planned this, as we will later find out, but to turn around and suggest what looks like just about everybody went, at once. No.
It's crazy.
No, it reminded me at times, Batman Begins, you know when the gas gets like spread across Gotham at the end of the film, and everyone's just fighting and attacking each other? That's what it kind of reminded me of. Like, and it's like, it's just silly. It wouldn't be that way. Yeah. In fact, most people would be scared shitless. Yeah. So if you want to show it, so the idea like just so many people would be part of this, I'd get disconnected.
Yeah.
But then the film just can't help itself and it wants to hammer its point home. So the Tucker Ranch, Juan and TT save them and they end up driving off while more people arrive inside a big lorry.
Yeah.
I did laugh. It was like, of all the things that are probably available to drive, you chose the lorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, okay, fair enough.
You should say Nippia. Oh, I don't know.
But in this back of the van where Adelia is, we have two characters of just worst Purge characters ever, of just the most ham-fisted, embarrassing, just so... And the problem is it goes on too long.
Yeah.
We see too many scenes. One of them is a white Nazi. Yeah. And there's no question that he's a Nazi because he has a swastika on his fucking face. And of course he's given abuse and being rapey and weird. Yeah. Well, he will when he gets free, he attempts to rape her as well. Yeah. Because as if we didn't need any more, this guy's a dick. You just have to hammer that point. But the other one is arguably worse.
Oh yeah.
And the reason why she's worse is because she's just some blonde chick in her 20s giving it all, I love the Purge, la 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 la, all that shit.
I hate that.
And it's so, like, why is everyone fucking psychotic?
Yeah.
And it's just everything I hate about the Purge in one enclosed space.
And as well, I would thought a lot of the worst part of racism is when it's not. Obviously, there's the really aggressive stuff is awful, but like when people do it slyly, and that's like what's implied, and then people kind of question, go, "Oh, you took it wrong. I'm not racist."
Yeah. That's you taking it wrong.
Like,
people, like when they say something like people like you,
people like you, or not getting a job, or getting slightly undercut with things. It's like that's worse. But I know you've got. When
are people just going to accept that you people are just better at sports than us? From Peep Show.
Oh yeah.
And it's the you people talking directly to a black man about that. Yeah. Do you see what I mean? And it's like
I don't know, got to make impact though. But
it's just too much.
There's just too much. Like, I mean, you could have. Oh, I don't know how you could do it, but you can just by a look, you can. I had a couple just looking at them like with disgust and disdain. Yeah. That would have been enough to go, well, clearly. But he's not. He's ranting and raving. He's ranting and raving. He's got a swastika on his fucking face. Yeah. It's just like he's all like, I'm gonna get you Mexicans, and it's a pure America. And she's going la 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 next to her, and it's just like you hate it. I hated it. So I was quite pleased when it goes to outside and you see a dude holding a rocket launcher. Yeah. And I'm like, yay! He's gonna blow the van up, and he does. Obviously, Adelia survives. The boss star survives. He disappears from the film in a bit, and we never see him again. No,
so that's that. I do appreciate that the white supremacist, he gets killed. He gets strangled and stuff like that. So there is that aspect of it. And meanwhile, the Tuckers on that side. So we got Juan, TT, Cassie, which is Dylan's pregnant wife, and his sister Harper. So they agree after being arrested by Juan to try and find his wife, and he's like, he knows where she'll be going.
Yep.
And admittedly, they probably meet up too conveniently.
It is quite convenient, like
it doesn't take them long to meet up.
In that van, for the size of that truck thing, whatever they've got, doesn't get hit much with bullets. But they stop for a while.
It is true. You get a couple of parts where they stop, and you got the whole tension stuff.
Just show a couple of bullets piercing the outside of it, because you don't see anything piercing the outside of that. And that whole scene when they stop, there's a chit chat. Go on, go ahead without me to Adelia by her boss. Yep. And it's like, get going, because there's a fucking...
Yeah, here's one of the weirdest things. All you hear in the background, the soundtrack to this is gunfire. Oh, yeah. Gunfire. Yeah. So, like, it is a bit, like, constant. And you're like later, it's even worse when you get to El Paso. And I'm like, I said to you during it, how have they not been hit by a stray bullet? Yeah. This is constant gunfire. But the group to rescue Adelius, and that's where Darius, the boss, ends up leaving. And of course, they're ambushed by more purgers, and it's that sort of stuff. And to be honest, it's just not very interesting. No. What I wanted to see, and why I was losing interest quite quickly, is I wanted to see this on a scale. I wanted to see I said to you, oh my god, it's going to be really interesting to watch America creates its own monsters, and it's going to tear itself apart. Give me that. But instead, we just go, no, we're going to focus on this group, and we're going to localise it in a neighbourhood. And in a bit, in a very couple of streets of a city. And I'm like, don't know if I want that. I really don't know if I want that. I feel like I got that in Anarchy. Yeah. I feel like I got that already. Yeah. And this is just the same thing, because I'm not seeing anything particularly different.
I don't see why you couldn't have shown, like, they do it so well in other films, like news snippets.
Well, we do jump into some news bits, and they do get some sort of wider reach and imagery of when they're looking out across the sort of state of Texas.
Okay.
And that aspect, I do like that, but it's not enough. I wanna, dare I say it, I guess this is just me, I just want to have a new show where they cut constantly to falling cities and the collapse of society and how the government responds to this. Because the government will end up responding to this by effectively declaring martial law and sending the army in to stop this. However, if you know your earlier Purge films, this is just the same as them sending out those roving fucking groups to mop up the homeless people and deal with their own issues that they've been waiting for forever. It's no different. Yeah. It's just not that interesting. Yeah. So one of the things you're going to have to get used to hearing as well is the Forever Purge. The Forever Purge. Purging forever and all that. It's what everyone just seems to shout. Everyone seems to have decided to be part of this. This coordinated thing is really, really coordinated. And truth be told, it starts to be irritating. Do you know, were you getting into that whole thing?
No, and I feel like the Forever Purge, how long would you keep that going for? Like, if you're killing everyone you come across, there's going to be...
Well, it implies that they're just going to try and rid America of non-Americans. But good luck with that. It's a long old task.
Yeah. It's the Forever Purge. Like, you got to keep saying it.
Yeah, I mean, it's said a fucking lot. It is said a lot. You know, there's a part where they're chased down the street by a gang on bikes being told to pull over, and to show their allegiance, they hold up a flag that says they're, like, she says, "Oh, Forever Purge, motherfuckers," and then they leave them alone.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. It's like, well...
I like the deception, though. There was a bit of deception in that. So the one from the Tucker clan, she put a sign up in the window and they left them alone.
Yeah.
So I quite like that quick thinking.
The problem with that is then it's not purging anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just insurrection. Yeah. And that's suddenly, again, like...
Forever insurrection.
It doesn't quite ring as much, does it?
Yeah.
But yeah, to move the story along, Canada and Mexico open up borders for the next 6 hours. So basically, if you're trying to escape the collapse of America, you can go here. And that's where our group decided to go to Mexico through El Paso. But by the time they arrive in El Paso, it's all gone crazy. And NFFA have condemned it and so on. And sent in the army to contain the violence, you know. And that's where I think the movie falls apart the most. I think this is the worst sequence. I think the El Paso sequence is pretty poor. Dragged out. Very, very dragged out. It's basically, it's not very well shot. It's not very nice to look at. It's just constant explosions and death and stuff like that. And not in a cool, action-packed way. Because the camera stays attached to our group. Yeah. And that becomes a bit of a problem. But military forces arrive and they get separated when a tank blows up part of a building. And the women, it's the women from the men, isn't it, separated? Yeah. Yeah. So they end up carrying on their own, getting to a specific place. And they end up getting captured by the bloke. So, Juan, TT, Dylan and Harper. No, 4 out of them. It's just Adelia and Cassie who are separated. They're the ones that go on their own because Cassie being pregnant. And they end up coming across the PPF. I keep doing too many P's. The PPF, where their leader offers Dylan and Harper a chance to survive provided they kill Juan and TT. And this is where the movie really lost me. Yeah. I was like, oh man, who's this fucker? Yeah. Like, who's this guy?
Why have we got that extra bit?
Yeah, because initially I was like, oh no, maybe they're not bad guys. And then they're like, oh yeah, we'll let you live if you kill that. You know, and it's like, oh, cool, great stuff. But obviously, Dylan by this point has had a big old change of heart about Mexicans. Oh, yeah. And now he's all like, fuck you, I ain't going to do it. But he ended up shooting and killing TT because someone had to die. And TT was easily the most expendable at this point. Definitely. But thankfully the military come along, cause a lot of chaos. They end up killing the leader, the leader's girlfriend, like, you know, crazy, because she's doing a la stuff as well. And he swears revenge. Basically, though, the military are forced to have to abandon El Paso when their base gets destroyed. And Mexico's like, well, that's it, we're done. They start closing their border. We do get a cool shot of, like, all the cars trying to get into Mexico. Yeah, which is always a cool thing. It's like the airport scene when you're at airport and all that, but everything goes to cancel, that kind of, or delayed. Downtown, Adelia protects Cassie from other purgers, revealing that she and Juan had once been members of self-defense groups. So they had actually been fighting in Mexico themselves, who trained to fight. So yeah, okay. It's a bit thrown in there, but fine.
Yeah, just got to adapt to it.
Yeah. And they end up all reuniting at a safe house run by nearby Native American tribe. Ooh. So we're getting into that aspect of things as well. And he offers to sort of transport them across the borders as refugees. So a sneaky way into Mexico. Yeah. Cool. But the PPF is in hot pursuit. And we kind of get a long-winded sort of fight end sequence where it is pretty good at times. Thanks to clever shots, good use of lighting, and the idea that you have no bullets. forced to take on hand-to-hand combat and stuff like that. I didn't mind it.
Yeah.
I like the part in the house particularly.
Yeah, I just no action scenes. I've done in loads of films. Then I didn't care for it. I could take or leave, things like that.
The problem is they never spent enough time making you really hate the villain. So this top dude, Alpha, has his caught. Like, he takes Adelia hostage and he is eventually killed. What they lacked, though, was by introducing him 3/4 of the way from the movie. I don't really give a fuck. No, imagine if when this first kicked off, he appeared on TV in some sort of pirate news thing, telling exactly what their purpose was. What if we saw him on the streets leading up to the purge?
None of that.
What if Adelia had gone to a shop and he had been casually racist to her? Things like that. Yeah. None of that. Suddenly he's just there in El Paso and it's like, oh, okay, it's you. All right. So yeah, I mean, ultimately they get in across the Mexican border as you would expect, and when they get there, Dylan finds out Cassie gave birth, and thank you, Juan. He even speaks in Spanish to Juan about it, so he's redeemed effectively, so to speak. And then we kind of go into what would be the sequel bait. The country's in flames, the NFA is blamed and disbanded for the prolonged violence. And we end with news reports suggesting that people are rising up to fight against the Forever Purgers. And that's how it ends. Now, that's intriguing to a degree. Problem is, I just don't think that'll make a good movie.
No.
Because isn't that just people against people? Where's the purge? Where's that aspect of, are we just doing an action movie then?
And you can't really put any more elements to it because then it gets even messier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a really hard one to kind of call what route they're going to go down.
It also suggests we are actually going to end this world.
Yeah.
Because if this is the NFA being disbanded again, we can never go back.
No, of course not.
We can never go back, right? I say that as if they can't just rewrite it in and go, well, they're back again.
It was all a dream. Bumped his head.
But that would be pushing the limits of of the audience, I think, personally. Yeah. So that's the Forever Purge. It is a story that you can gloss over because ultimately what we've got is a little bit of a road movie. I think the best parts are, this best 20 to 30 minutes. I think that's where you get the most tension leading up to the reveal of the Forever Purge. I think that is the best part. I think it's a film scattered with good moments. Yeah. And for the most part, good acting. I do think the acting is really solid across it. I do. The problem is they're given this overtly piss poor dialogue to hammer points home, when a lot of the time a look or no words or a comment is just enough. There's sometimes where we just talked it through and I feel like we wrote a better story.
Yeah.
Do you know?
I just didn't like. I just felt a bit bland, a bit bloated. Like they had this story at the beginning, and then just these chunky kind of drawn out scenes. As much as, and so I would have cared to have had a bit more with the people beforehand. There wasn't much conflict. There wasn't much conflict between like the American guy and the Mexican guy. There
was none. But
to come back from, I felt like
no. But to be fair, I think they had to do that. I said it to you during it. If they made him overtly racist, a redemption story isn't going to fly. Yeah, it isn't going to fly because he's still going to be going like, well, okay, you appreciate him now that he saved your life.
Yeah, and going back on that, I did say about like the whole the underlying racism is.
He struggled. His whole thing is that he struggles. He struggled with basically prejudice more than racism.
I would have liked to see more sit on that ranch. Could have some more fun with the ranch.
Could we? I felt like it was perfectly fine. I thought there were certain lines that I liked. I liked the fact there's a discussion about whether a Mexican could be a cowboy. I thought that's a discussion that was quite interesting. Yeah. You know?
Yeah, there was a couple of ideas there, but I just kind of wanted to put these big action scenes in, and it just got very boring by the end.
See, again, I disagree with you. I think they cared more about hammering home the immigration part of things, and sometimes it worked in its favour. For example, the fact that the ranch family would end up being attacked by the one white farmhand they had, and not the Mexican farmhands. Yeah, that's on the nose, but it's not expressed that way. Yeah. So I can live with that. Yeah. Having the two characters have a fucking face-to-face conversation and be like, well, I got nothing wrong with you people. I just think we should stick to our own, you know? Like that, it's just like, it doesn't like, that's horribly racism. It's because it just doesn't fit. It doesn't feel right. It feels forced. Whereas earlier, the looks and the nods and the reaction, and when he's accusing him of being late. Yeah. Like, so he's picking on him. Yeah. He's like, I wasn't late. I'm never late, sir. Oh, you're calling so-and-so a liar. I'm like, that gets it across more. Yeah. Like, he's looking for an excuse to sack you. Yeah. Well, really, it's because he's prejudiced. But ultimately, as a Purge film, it fits fine amongst the rest. It fits fine. I think you write yourself into a corner when the moment you decided to do Forever Purge, because that's why they had to kind of move it into a whole it was a planned insurrection style event more than anything else. Because ultimately you're like, well, that won't continue. No. If you like, I want another hour to finish killing more people, that's going to end at a certain point. So you move it to this insurrection style position and obviously make parallels to real worlds. But that's as far as you can go with that already.
Yeah.
It feels like we're not even running out of steam. It feels like we're at the end of the track for this franchise.
Yeah, done.
And we are. And the joke is, we've already had the prequel. I don't know what else they can fucking do beyond side stories similar to the series set during certain periods of the Purge. Yeah. That's it. But I don't know if that's going to get the interest of a mainstream audience compared to a continuation story.
No, there's a set audience for people, especially people that like to go to cinema. I feel like in general, if you're going to the cinema to see a film, these people want like the action, they want the gore and stuff. They don't want the nuances and the... I
massively disagree. I will not disrespect the audience quite as heavily as that, because that is very disrespectful. Proof in the pudding is the reason why franchises die. And we've seen it when we've covered things like Saw and Paranormal Activity, and it's the lowering box office takes. Because what it is less and less people are interested as franchises go on. And that's what it is. We've seen it. It's why these franchises inevitably end and then get rebooted 10 years down the line, or an attempt to make a new sequel because they think the interest is back. Because nostalgia goggles have come on and enough time has passed for people not to get sick of them. That's why Saw died for a while, came back for one film and stuff like that. Same why we haven't had a Paranormal Activity film for how long? You know what I mean? Yeah. Because the franchises do die. It's no different to The Purge. However, truth be told, I can see where we'd go. Just move country.
Yeah.
That's it. Just do it in a different country. A one-off film in a different country. Do it in the UK if you want. Say we were inspired.
Yeah.
And do our own. That's what you end up doing. You know, as an extra film here and there, I think, more than anything else. That's what we think of it. Overall, don't care for it. Don't hate it. Don't love it. It's nowhere as good as the best of what The Purge did. But it's also maybe not the worst. Yeah. Yeah? You got any thoughts on that? Let us know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and Tumblr. Go to Patreon to help us out over there. That's patreon.com/gbhbl, as well as Big Cartel, where you can find some of our merchandise. We have a podcast running on SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts. And of course, if you like this video, do us a favour, hit the subscribe button and help the channel grow. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?